All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of the iDebate server. I'm the moderator for tonight's debate. Oh man, my bad. I'm also the room owner and the creator of the iDebates community. So, the topic for tonight is: should the United States have stricter gun control? Arguing in the affirmative, with the blue name, is the iFunny user Neighborhood Weeb Slayer. He is an enigma to pretty much everybody. We don't really know where he falls politically. I think the best thing to say is that he's just arguing in the affirmative. Arguing in the negative with the red name is the iFunny user fully semi-automatic rifle. Is a conservative activist and a pro-gun proponent. Each debater will be given 5 minutes to present their opening argument. After each debater has given their opening, they will then have 10 minutes to rebut their opponent. After the rebuttals, they will have 20 minutes of open dialogue, asking each other questions with as minimal interruptions as possible. After the dialogue, they will both offer a 5-minute closing. This will conclude the debate, at which point we will allow you audience members to connect and ask questions to the debaters. The debaters will only answer questions they are directly asked, so if you wish to hear both people answer, make sure to ask both of them. Also make sure to say who you are asking the question to before you ask the question. The Q&A will last 30 minutes. After that's up, the recording will stop, so any further discussion between the audience and the debaters will not be included in the YouTube upload. The rules are simple. The debaters will not be allowed to go over time during the opening, or they will be muted. The rebuttal, however, will be given 15 to 20 seconds of overlap, since the debaters will likely be creating it as we go along. The open dialogue will be as free as possible, and while the debaters are restricted from directly insulting one another at any point, profanity will not be censored, as long as it's not used gratuitously, which is my discretion. If the conversation between the debaters becomes incoherent or off topic, I, the moderator, will intervene and bring it back to the point at hand. The closing will also last for no more than 5 minutes, or the debater will be muted. During each phase of the debate, I will let the debaters know when they have 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, and 10 seconds left. If they're still talking after their time expires, they will be muted, and we will move on to the next phase. The audience is allowed to utilize the text chat, fact-check the debaters, and deliberate the topic among themselves. However, you will not be allowed to connect until the Q&A, and if you spam the text chat over and over again with the same things, or you abuse people in the text chat, you will go into timeout for approximately 2 minutes, and then I will take you out after the 2 minutes has expired. Please do not try to distract the debaters. You will be assigned the role of questioner and be allowed to connect once we get to that phase. If both the debaters understand and agree to the rules, we will go ahead and begin. So, Weeb Slayer, you are arguing in the affirmative, which means you're going to be going first. You may start whenever you're ready.
Alright. Let me just start out by saying that I love children. Preferably when they're alive. Which is why it's time to ban assault rifles in America. There's like no realistic reason why we even need assault rifles anymore. And if you actually read the Second Amendment, it says I have it right here.
Weeb, I gotta stop you, buddy. I gotta stop you because your mic is cutting out. Weeb, your mic is cutting out.
To the
Weeb,
security of a free state.
Weeb, your mic is cutting out.
Where are all these militias? Like, what the fuck?
Weeb, your mic is cutting out. We cannot hear you. You need to try to fix that. You're muted right now.
Is it cutting out right now?
Yeah, it's cutting out really bad. We can't really understand what you're saying, bud.
Am I good now?
It sounds a little bit better now. Continue.
You want me to start over or keep going?
You can start over from after you said that we don't need assault rifles anymore.
Yeah, so we don't need assault rifles anymore, and if you actually read the Second Amendment, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Like, where the fuck are all these militias? Is the NRA a militia? Is Pedophiles Anonymous a militia? Nobody belongs to a militia because it was an amendment written 200 years ago by slave owners who could have never predicted the technology and the manpower that we have today. And it's not even about the guns when we're talking about tyranny anymore, because the government has tanks, nukes, and airstrikes and all types of shit. We're not using muskets anymore. So the tyranny debate is like just fucking terrible. So if you think that's like the reason why we should ban assault rifles or we shouldn't, then you're just fucking retarded. And if we're talking about mass shootings, Australia in 1996 banned assault rifles, and they haven't had a mass shooting since. So I don't know what the like. If we want to do a buyback, obviously we have a shit ton of more guns, but we 30 to 40 years in prison if you were to carry an assault rifle or any type of firearm. All you would have to do is tell people if you carry a firearm, you're getting 4 years in prison. And people would hand in their guns like crazy. No one would resist. I don't believe all these conservatives when they say, "Yeah, we're gonna fucking fight back against our military and kill our brothers who are fucking police officers and all that shit." It's not gonna happen. It's all bullshit. There's no reason why you need them. You're not gonna fight against tyranny. You're not gonna stop the nukes. Why the fuck would you even need them? A Gallup poll even showed 6 in 10 Americans support the idea of an assault rifle buyback. 6 in 10 right now, today in 2019. So when all those old people die, like it's going to happen, and there's no tyranny to fight. So I don't know what the fuck people are complaining about, and it just this whole idea that we're gonna fight tyranny is just ridiculous. It's not gonna happen. And the next reason is because gun culture in general just creates an unsafe and toxic environment. It uh, what the fuck?
You continue.
Anyway, like I
Continue.
was saying,
Go ahead and
gun
continue.
culture, gun culture creates a toxic environment. One of my friends, Kyle, for example, he he had a divorce because he was overdosing on steroids and he had an erectile dysfunction. His fiance cheated on him, and he went to a gun show and bought a gun, that the gun loophole, and he decided not to use it because I talked him down. But that's just an example of how easy it is to get your hands on a gun when you're mentally ill in America. And when all these children die, we're surprised. Like it makes no sense at all. And the last argument that I want to address in my opening is the self-defense argument. You don't need an
You have
AK-47
1 minute left.
or any type of gun to protect yourself. And I think this can be best explained through a story. So imagine we're 10 years in the future, and I'm laying in bed with my wife, Maddie, and she's getting ready to squirt her period blood in my mouth, and she taps my shoulder and says, "Senpai, I think I heard a noise downstairs." So I
Stop
grab
with
my
the
AR-15.
vulgarities.
All right, I'm good. I'm good. So I grab my AR-15 and I head downstairs, and someone's stealing my TV. No one wants to fucking kill you. This whole self-defense shit where you think that there's gonna be a fucking murder in your house is just
10
not gonna
seconds left.
happen. That's all I have to say. There's no self-defense. People just want your TV. They don't want to kill you.
Okay. At this point, fully semi-automatic rifle, you are free to begin your opening.
All right. So this is going to be a bit shorter because I prefer dialogue. I don't really have a big opener, but I just have a few points to present, I guess. Um, so currently there's I believe that what's in place as far as restricting people from buying firearms is completely reasonable, if not too much. The Second Amendment guarantees the right of an individual to protect themselves with the use of not only guns but any weapon. Inalienable right to protect yourself and your family in your house and on the. Let's see. Let's see. Um, I can't really counter anything in your opener because I have some stuff written down, so we'll get to that later. But um, almost half of the United States households owns a firearm, at least one firearm that they use for defending their house or defending their family, which is about 80 to 100 million people in the United States. A buyback would be not only insanely expensive, but completely, completely impossible, considering how many people wouldn't turn the stuff.
Are you done, FSAR?
I just have a few more things. Assault rifles are used in less crimes annually compared to handguns. And fewer than 1% of firearms will ever be used in the commission of a crime, according to the FBI Uniform Crimes. I'm sorry, I'm butchering this, but that's what I got for my opener.
Okay, Weebslayer, you can rebut that for up to 10 minutes.
You said 80 million people had guns. 80 million households. 80 million people have guns. But then you said half the country has guns. There are a lot more than 160 million people who have. There are a lot more than 160 million people in the United States. Half of the houses that you drive by do not have guns in them. That's completely unrealistic. That's not true. And you said the buyback is expensive. We can take those guns and we can sell them to other countries. We can scrap them, but it's not expensive because we're actually going to save money by the money people waste thinking that this false security of self-defense they put into buying these. They spend tens of thousands of dollars to protect their family and they never use them. So I don't think that's going to be an economic collapse or what. It's not going to be that expensive in the long run. And you said 1% are used in crimes, but I mean, certain people will own up to 200 guns. So that's not realistic because people can just keep buying and rebuying and rebuying. There are gun nuts who will buy a bunch of fucking guns. So that's this idea that one gun is bought for one person and then 1% of people commit crimes with guns. That's not true. Gun nuts buy a shit ton of guns. They get scattered, they get lost, they don't secure them up because it's not illegal. If a kid wanders onto their property and grabs an AR-15 and kills 50 people in a school, the owner of that gun is not responsible. It's unrealistic. So this 1% of guns used in crimes is very misleading. That's all I have to say.
Okay. At this point, a fully semi-automatic rifle you can rebut for up to 10 minutes.
All right, I kind of want to get to the dialogue, but I'm having a problem with your logic here. You seem very focused on assault rifles, and I don't know if you really understand the statistics behind the use of what you call assault rifles and actual gun deaths. Um, the AR-15 doesn't really, it isn't used in as many mass shootings as you think it is. I'm pretty sure. Let me see. Duh, 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 duh. Okay, we'll get to that when we're in the uh the discussion. Yeah. Let's just go into the discussion.
So you're yielding your time?
Yeah.
Okay, I will begin the 20-minute open dialogue at this point. Timer's going.
All right. So, what do you think an AR-15 is?
An AR-15, it's a type of gun. First of all,
Okay.
like I know it's not a brand of gun. I know an AR-15 isn't an assault rifle. I know it's just the company's name for it. I'm arguing that we should ban all guns though. But the AR-15 is used in a lot of mass shootings, constantly seen over and over again. And that's just one example. But I understand that if you bring 5 pistols to school, you can probably kill 30 people. So I'm not really on that whole like assault rifle ban thing. I'm just more about guns in general. But assault rifles and these high caliber weapons, I think that's a good place
All
to
right.
start.
Hold on. High caliber. Like, what do you mean by high caliber weapons? An AR-15 is not a high caliber.
I'm just saying in general, that's a good place to start. I'm not saying that it has to be that gun specifically that
I
gets banned.
I mean, you want to ban all guns, and I mean, I just don't think that that's possible in the climate that the United States is in right now.
I'm
Given
saying
the
in the
people,
long I'm saying in the long run, it's going to happen, whether we
it's
like it or
not
not.
it's not gonna happen
If you think in
ever.
200 years people are still going to be walking around with guns, I think you might be crazy. It's not going to happen. We, I mean, right now it's pretty irrelevant to have a gun. 6 in 10 Americans want a full assault rifle buyback, and the old people are barely hanging on to the Second Amendment because it's hidden behind an amendment. It's hard to really get legislation going from the state, but half of the states right now are ready to ban guns, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. The youth is fully supporting the buyback. So when you say it's not going to happen, I don't understand what you mean by that.
I mean, if I feel like if people are starting to bust down doors with guns to take other people's guns, that's not going to turn.
It's not. It's very. I think very few people would actually fight and die for their right to keep their gun.
I heavily disagree.
And
I also doubt that people who are told to go in and do that would even agree to do that because people believe it as a human right. People believe in the right to protect yourself. All you're doing with getting rid of all the guns in the United States is helping criminals
how are you helping criminals?
because they're the people you're not going to get the guns back from. I
Yes,
mean,
you will.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. When you want to get rid of all guns, there's no way to find them. You could hide. I mean, like, how do you expect to get every single gun back out of the hands of innocent people?
I
I
know
guess.
that there are unlicensed firearms, but almost all firearms are licensed. They are well documented. You can find them and get them.
What do you mean? What do you mean licensed? That's false.
I
That would be
mean,
a gun registry. That doesn't exist.
I'm saying that, like I said in my opening, if you own a firearm, this is all you have to do.
Yeah, I
Say, all
said
right, you get 50 years in prison if you own a firearm. That's it. People will hand in their guns.
I
And
I do
and
not believe.
I'm not saying that we're going to do this today. We're obviously not. Even though 6 in 10 Americans support a buyback, it's not going to happen today.
Where are you getting that stat from? I'm sorry. I just don't
Gallup.
believe Gallup polls. Could you I guess I can't say can you find that, but I just don't agree with I don't think that's accurate.
But if you know the youth is overwhelmingly against guns.
I also disagree with.
You think that the majority of young people like guns? You think the majority of millennials like the Second Amendment?
I think that it's a negative stigma that's spin on guns instead of um
It doesn't matter how it gets there. It's there.
okay, hold on.
Especially with Gen X or Gen Z. You think that they support the Second Amendment?
They're children. I mean, they don't understand the significance of it when they're being raised as anti-gun and they're being fed I guess I don't want to say lies, but they're just misled into seeing all this negative like all this negativity that springs up from guns. I could see how it would be seen as a bad thing, but they're not shown the good aspects like preventing crimes.
That is so rare that it never happens. These children.
Preventing preventing crimes is bad? I mean, like, you think
I'm
that they
saying
don't
that
prevent.
I'm saying that they cause way more crimes than they prevent. And
They
these
do
kids,
not. That is a
yes,
blatant lie.
yes, they do.
What is um, in a Florida study backed by the CDC, guns prevent an estimated 2.5 million crimes a year or 6,800 crimes.
It's very hard to measure that, and I'm sure that also includes cops too, though. But overall,
What do you see a cop as? It's a good guy with a gun.
that's totally different. You know, I don't mean that. You know, cops should have. I think cops should have guns. I don't want them
Why?
walking around with batons.
Why?
Why? Because they're licensed. They're trained. They know how to use a gun. They're not gonna. They're not.
What percentage of gun owners do you think are just buying it to just shoot random shit and aren't just actually there to protect them?
No, I think they really do believe that they are buying it to protect themselves, but it's completely unrealistic. And less than 1% of them are actually going to shoot the serial killer in the head at night. It's not going to happen.
That's not
And
true.
you are not.
Mass
It's a
shootings have
false
been
sense of
mass
security.
shootings have been stopped by people with guns. Good guys with guns.
Very, very rarely. In that church shooting, 60 people got shot and killed before one guy with a pistol barely got him.
No.
It's the whole good guy with the gun. Let's
So
say let's go on the teacher
no,
thing.
no, 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 no. Are you talking about
What?
Sutherland Springs, the
Yes.
church? That was the name escapes me right now, but it was an NRA instructor with an AR-15 that stopped him when he got out of the church, going to another. Yeah, Stephen Wolford. After he left the church, he was going to go to another area and keep going on his rampage. But God, he stopped him with an AR-15. It wasn't a pistol. If you think that an AR-15 is different than a pistol, and I mean, is it more? It's more accurate. It's easier to use, but it's not more dangerous. Pistols are way more dangerous. But you keep asking for these large rifle bans, and I just feel like that. Yeah, I mean, comparatively, a pistol is, I mean, easier to use, easier to make a mistake with than a rifle. But
Well, I said that I do want to ban pistols too, though. And I understand the vast majority of gun crimes don't happen with AR-15 assault rifles. They happen with,
okay,
in the
hold
hood,
on. Can we
pistol
just
whipping.
stop for a second? What do you
Yeah.
think an assault rifle is?
Assault rifle's a big ass gun, high caliber, high magazine.
High
That can just
caliber.
high caliber, high magazine. That can unload
Okay, so
automatically on
then an
people.
AR-15 would not automatically on people. An AR-15 is not an assault rifle. And
I
assault
didn't.
rifles were banned
I
in
already
like
said it wasn't.
1978.
I already said that.
They were already banned in 1978.
You can still get them though.
They were, I mean, illegally, sure.
People have them.
Legally, yeah.
What I'm saying is that all guns are capable of doing this, so it doesn't matter if it's made illegal or not.
What do you mean
What I'm saying,
all guns are not able to be shot fully up? And that's what I think what your definition of an assault rifle is.
assault rifle doesn't need to be fully automatic. It needs to be high caliber and have a high
Okay.
capacity.
So high caliber, high capacity
Yes.
is your definition.
I don't have the exact dictionary definition, but that I think would be a good general
So
cover of them.
what exists in society today that is an assault rifle that should be banned?
AK-47.
You can't get an AK-47
People get them though.
illegally.
What I'm saying is
They get them
what
illegally.
what I'm saying though is that rifles in general should just be banned. But
Rifles
people
in
have assault
general
rifles.
should be banned.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
So
And there's this good guy with the gun thing that conservatives try to hold on to is it's not gonna work. This idea that if teachers had guns that a single mass shooting would be stopped, it's ridiculous.
okay,
It's not gonna happen.
I'm just gonna give you a hypothetical, okay? And I want
Yeah.
you to stick with me because it's gonna be a little it's not gonna be terrible, but it's gonna be a little bit dark, okay? So
Yeah.
we're gonna look into Parkland, okay? So
Yeah.
let's say two teachers in the school were just armed with a pistol, a concealed carry, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that they would have done you think that them having two concealed carry would have done nothing to persuade him to stop just shooting random like innocents and just start looking for, oh wait, who's shooting at? If the teachers like found out where he was and started shooting him, he would stop shooting innocent students and civilians, and he would be actively searching for, oh shoot, who's trying to shoot, and that would save lives. And that's not I mean that's highly probable. I mean that's like almost guaranteed to happen. If they're in,
If two teachers in the entire school, you said, and that's
yeah,
being generous. That I mean, teachers do not want to carry teachers do not want to carry guns.
no conservative is pushing for the mandatory enforcement of teachers
I
carrying.
know that. I know that. But I'm just saying, if
If they
three teachers in
want
the school have one, if they want, which
if
you
they
know,
want to, and if the school board wants to do a certain thing where it's like if you get a certain amount on a test or something, because obviously a school is different than just carrying on the road, then I guess the school board could do that. And if they pass the test, then they can conceal carry. It's like having a security officer inside the school. I don't see what the difference is if it's just a teacher.
I know that, but the security guard doesn't do shit either.
So,
What I'm saying is that teachers, I don't know the statistics, but the vast majority, if almost not all of them, don't want to carry guns. So if you have
they don't
100
have
teachers
to.
if you have 100 teachers in a building and two of them are carrying guns, it's not going to make a difference. He's going to kill 30 people before he gets in there. And he might, if he knows the teacher might have a gun, just shoot the teacher first.
It's a concealed carry. There's no way to tell. A
I know there's no way to tell. Just shoot the teacher first, then, and just forget about it. And the chances that the only other teacher to have a gun is going to be
So,
in
I
the
mean, how
classroom
about
next
this? How about
door.
this? That's my way of limiting school shootings. What is your way? I mean, banning guns. The criminals are still going to get the guns to do.
No, I don't think that these kids with mental illnesses are going to be able to roll down to the docks and buy assault rifles for $5 grand on the black market. I don't think so. They're getting them from unsecured family members, from friends. If you ban assault rifles, I mean, they're not going to get their hands on them. It's going to
Okay.
be a very tough black market. So, yes, if you do ban them, the the first group of people that definitely will not be able to get them anymore is mentally ill teenagers. And I'm sure some people could possibly get them in very unlikely rare situations, which probably wouldn't make a difference. But these mentally ill teenagers with Asperger's are not going to be able to get them on the black market.
It's illegal for them to have a gun in general with
Yeah,
background checks and whatever. So
I know, but
you think that banning guns outright is a reason that kids shouldn't? I mean, if someone steals a gun and uses it in a crime, you think guns should be banned? Because that's what happened.
no, I'm saying that it's inevitable.
It's
If
not
guns
inevitable.
are scattered across the country, the mentally ill are going to get their hands on them all the time. They're everywhere. They're unsecure. At the very least, or we're talking about gun rights. We're not even talking about banning guns in this debate. You should be charged with a crime for not locking up your guns.
I think that putting your gun in an unsecure location is pretty stupid, and I'm sure a lot of gun owners agree. Obviously, there are people who disagree, but your right to a firearm guarantees you to be able to do whatever you want in that. And I think that putting legislation in place to make them more secure sort of infringes that right.
But I'm saying that the mentally ill will get their hands on them very easily if you don't secure them.
Yeah, I mean they
So you
probably will
agree
get
that
their hands on it.
you agree that they're going to get their hands on them. They're going to shoot up people and kill hundreds of people, but you don't give
No,
a fuck.
no, 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 no. You can't just stand on graves and say that I don't care about that because I do. I think that school shootings are a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. I think mass shootings in general are a terrible thing.
Yeah, everyone does.
Yes, everyone does.
So
Everyone
what
just
I'm
says
saying
there's
is
solution.
these kids find these guns from family members and friends who leave them on the kitchen table or in the barn unsecured. Why not just it's such a small thing to
All
ask
right, all
to
right.
keep it locked up.
I know we've been talking about mass shootings a lot, but it is sort of a minority of the larger banning guns. I feel like is sort of a little bit of an overreaction to kids taking guns from their parents and using them in crimes. So let's just get back to the main topic.
Hmm.
So
Well,
I remember you were arguing about the grammar of the Second Amendment. Is that correct? Could you explain, like, elaborate on that?
well, it was meant for militias, not individuals, and that's pretty much it. The
S-
it was the people actually formed militias in the 1700s because they were actually scared of tyrannical governments. But we're not using muskets and horses anymore. We're not going to fight our government if they decide to drop nukes on us. Literally, a handful of people could kill tens of millions of us, and we
All right, all
couldn't
right.
do anything about it. That's the reality. And they're not going to storm our houses. They're not going to knock on our houses with muskets. They are going to drop nukes and kill tens of
Okay.
millions of us.
Your your idea that the founding fathers didn't intend for technological advancement of weaponry from the time that they wrote the Constitution is not accurate in the slightest.
I don't think that they could have predicted nuclear bombs.
They probably, I mean, they probably could. I mean, they probably couldn't have predicted nuclear bombs, but they predicted fully automatic rifles and more dangerous guns and gun development, puckle gun, um, flintlock revolver, stuff like that. But I
But
mean, most of the 13 colonies had their own constitutions written in the states, and they all guaranteed the right to bear arms as an individual within. So saying that it's grammatically incorrect, saying that it only applies to militias or like organized militias, as you
that's what the
like,
Second Amendment
I
says.
know it says that, I know it says that, but it separates the idea into two different ideas.
Do you think states should be able to decide if you should have guns or not?
I don't think they
If
should. I
the
think that they should
if 99
enforce the rights that are presented in the Second Amendment and the other amendment.
so if 100% of this people in a population of a state decide we want to ban guns, you don't think they should be allowed to?
No, it's right. I mean, you
This,
have the right to not have a gun. If you don't want to have a gun, then you don't have to have a gun. So you don't have to have a gun, and then you're
you're
fine.
endangering other people by having a gun.
Cars are way more dangerous than guns. I could have a gun on my hip, and it could be a threat to no one, but I'm constantly a threat to other people while I'm driving down the street.
No, when you buy guns, other people buy guns because they feel the need to protect themselves against your guns. And this is what conservatives are scared of. If we ban guns, only criminals will have guns, but we can take the guns out of criminals' hands.
How? How do
50
you
years
know
in
where
prison,
those are?
50 years in prison, and if you return your guns and it's an illegal unlicensed firearm, we won't punish you. We'll
What
even
do you
pay
mean?
you for it.
What do you mean? What do you mean unlicensed firearm? I feel like you think that
I mean,
guns
people
are
that just
licensed. Do you think guns are
people
licensed?
they you need proper documentation for them.
You need documentation, but there isn't a registry. Like no one knows where the guns are. They just know that they're out there.
They know who purchased them. You need to go through the background check.
No. They
I'm
don't
saying
just
that I'm
they don't store
my whole
names.
argument is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can just tell
I think
people,
it matters. I
well,
mean,
you can tell people, we'll buy back your guns, no questions asked. It doesn't matter how you got them, and if you don't, and if we catch you with a gun, and we can pat you down whenever the fuck we want, you're gonna get 50 years in prison.
so
And if we do
50
catch you, if you want reduced sentence, you can tell us to your friends that have guns.
sounds a lot. That sounds a lot like something that happened in Germany.
You
About
guys have 1
arresting
minute.
people instead of
What I'm saying is, there are ways
the Australian
to do a
buyback.
buyback.
The
The
Australian
Australian
buyback
buyback worked.
didn't work. It
It
did
did
not
work.
work. It
It
did
did
not work.
work.
The rate was already declining before the buyback. It put the country in a pretty substantial amount of debt. Not only to mention that it's a much, much, much smaller country, and the percentage of individuals that owned a gun in Australia was significantly less than the United States. What was it? I think it was around 3% of people in Australia owned a gun at the time, compared to like 40 or 50% in the United States right now. Not to
I don't think
mention gun importation in Australia is easily regulated since it's an island.
but they weren't even strict about it. They asked for guns, and they asked for the guns to be bought.
10 seconds.
Australia was founded differently than the United States, and there's 393 million-ish guns in the United States. I don't feel like the government can.
Okay, both of you guys have been muted. The time for the cross-examination has expired, so we're going to go into the closing now. Since Weeb, you opened first, fully semi-automatic, you're going to close first. You can take up to 5 minutes to close, or you can yield your closing and we can go to Q&A. You're up, FSAR.
I think let's just go to the Q&A. I don't really have a closing.
Okay, Weeb, you can close for up to 5 minutes if you want to.
That's what I need to say.
Okay, before we go into the Q&A, Weeb, we're going to give this 30 minutes. For most people are going to be asking you questions. Afterward, how would you feel about redoing this with me?
That's fine.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Okay, the Q&A starts now. Type a 1 in the chat if you want to ask a question. Jesus Christ.
Oh, Weeb, is that bait? Do you actually think that?
Weeb, that was a question to you.
That's a question.
Are you baiting right now, or do you actually think that?
I'm not betting at all. If you look at any other buyback in the
Oh.
world, in Australia or Britain, anywhere across Europe, it's not this idea of having us a crippling economy.
Oh, I'm
The
not
reason why it
winning.
crippled Australia is because they did it all at once. But if we were to slowly leak it, which is why I said rifles should be
I
our
don't want
first
to marry
target.
you anymore. Sorry, I don't love you anymore.
That's the question.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, the next questioner is going to be Dravik. Dravik, you're up. Who's your question for?
Questions for Weeb. So, if you look at statistics as far as gun violence in America, if you look at every city included, we are very close to the top. But if you take out DC, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and New Orleans, we drop to almost the bottom. Those are all areas that have strict gun control. What do you have as far as info on why that might be?
Well, I think that's like about half our population, but when you condense a large, first of all, a lot of that's just culture, and this idea that you need to have a gun when you grow up, and there's like all those cities have gang culture, which I think that's the main reason with what you're talking about here, and I don't think that's representative of everything. I understand what you're saying though. Did you
They
restate
all
the
have
question though?
some of the strictest gun control in the country, hands down.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, there's several people shot
They, but
every weekend in Chicago.
but gun control means nothing. You need to ban guns. There's not a border to stop guns from coming in. So when you have these densely populated areas that make local laws for those areas, it's not going to make a difference. The guns are going to get in from outside of that area.
So, if that's the case, wouldn't it make sense to allow the civilians to be able to defend themselves? Because the police are always minutes away when the seconds matter.
I think that it'd be better to change everyone else.
Okay, I think Weeb has answered your question, Dravik. If we can move on to the next questioner. Okay. Ducky, are you ready? Okay, I'm going to skip you for now, and we'll go to the next questioner. If I can find them. Kidding me? My chat recall seems to be a little messed up. I'm having difficulty getting back to where everybody was typing one.
Looks like it was lazy.
Okay. If you wanted to ask a question earlier and you're next in line, please type a 1. Okay. Lazy, you're up.
Myself. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Number one, quick. Did Weeb, do you know what the Hughes Amendment and NFA are?
Nope.
Okay. I don't know if you should really be debating guns if you don't know what laws are already on the books. And fully semi-automatic, do you support repealing those or what?
Repealing what, sorry?
The NFA and the Hughes Amendment. I can give you a quick once over on what those are if you're not familiar.
Oh, yeah, sure. Give it once over.
Hughes Amendment. That's what banned the manufacture and sale of fully automatic weaponry.
Oh yeah,
And the
I
NFA
mhm.
is that's the tax stamp for short-barreled shotguns and rifles.
No, I don't think it should be repealed. I think it's fine the way it is. I mean, I think it should be. Hold on. I think that it should be repealed.
Okay, I think that question was answered. Are you satisfied, Lazy?
Yeah, that's good for me.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is going to be Rad.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, this is on my phone, by the way. I'm normally on my computer. But obviously, we're not going to get anywhere without compromise. Like, everyone in this chat knows that. We all have our convictions, but compromise is the only way forward, no matter how we do this. We can't carry on without compromise. So, I guess there's a couple things, both of you, that I'd like to ask about. If we legalized fully automatic weapons for veterans and state regulated and locally regulated, not federally regulated, militias, we had a 2 to 3 day waiting period, raising the age limit for possessing handguns to 21, which is already in effect in some states, mandatory safes in households, and the general deregulation of coming to possess guns, such as magazine limits, um, formats, like a lot of states are banning the pistol grips and the quote assault weapon styles. Do you think we could compromise with these and similar policies?
I'm sorry. I just don't really understand your question.
I'm sorry, it was a little bit long and I didn't get to type the full thing out.
If you could make it a little bit more succinct.
I found
Yeah.
that funny. Like, I guess, how willing are you to compromise? Because there's no way forward without compromise.
That's a good question. I mean, it depends. There's people on both sides who are extremists, and then there's people who are more moderate. I don't think that kids should be given guns. I don't think that the mentally insane should be given guns. I don't think people with a criminal background should be given guns.
Well,
I
hold on.
think
What exactly do you mean by criminal background?
people who've committed, like the way it is right now, like with the background check system.
Well, domestic abuse doesn't bar everyone from possessing guns. And that's one of my big problems.
If that's true, then I disagree. I think that should bar people from purchasing guns. I think that that's terrible.
Also, 40% of all cops. Don't mind that.
Uh, okay.
Let's not troll, guys, okay?
Weeb, what do you wanna
Rad, has your
respond?
question been answered?
It's
Let Weeb
good
respond to this. Both
enough.
of us.
Like, I'm kind of bored with this.
Weeb, what's your response?
Yeah, I think compromise is like, I'm not so sure about compromise because, well, we can do certain things, but at the end of the day, the youth is in overwhelming support of a buyback. So if you really want to ban guns like I do, you're kind of you're in a very tough spot because you can take steps like Trump with the stock ban and grip bans and raising the age to 21, but I don't think that's going to really make a difference in the long run. I think that we should work with people on the other side to make tweaks, but I think in the long run the buyback is what's really
What
coming
do
within the
you
next
mean
century.
by stock ban? Everyone is confused about this.
Bump stock ban.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
okay.
already in effect.
I
All
know.
right.
I'm saying that there is a little bit of compromise being made already, but
We're gonna
I
move on to
doubt
the
there's
next
gonna be any
question
real
now, guys.
compromise.
All right, yeah,
All right.
take me out.
It's
I'm-
gonna be
I-
the
as I
next
said, I'm
person
kinda
coming in
bored.
is Ducky. Okay, guys.
Sure.
Ducky, you're Ducky, you're on, buddy.
Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
All right, my question is for Weeb. All right, so this was actually asked earlier in the debate, but I wanted to press the issue. How do you define assault rifle?
I don't have the definition, but high caliber and a high capacity, I think that's a good way to define it.
Okay, so do you think the AR-15 is a high caliber?
I don't have a strong, strict definition. I know an AR-15 isn't an assault rifle, but it is high caliber. It is high capacity, but it wouldn't fall necessarily into that category.
So
So
how
I
do you
would want to
define a
ban
high
that. But
caliber? Because 5.56
I
is
don't.
actually very low caliber.
I don't have a strong definition of an assault rifle.
I'd also like to point out that I don't really think 30 rounds is high capacity when we have like a 100-round drum mag. I do have to ask, how do you think you're fit to debate this topic when you're clearly so uninformed on it?
I'm not ill-informed.
Okay, well, you think that an AR-15 is a high caliber rifle, which just proves that you definitely.
That's debatable.
All right, well, that's the end of my question. Just thought I'd point that out.
To clarify, Weeb, AR-15s have various calibers. Standard is 5.56, NATO 223. It's a very small caliber comparatively.
The default is considered a varmint round.
So, next questioner is going to be Andrew, but he typed his question. And his question is, if the United States cannot stop drug smuggling, how is it supposed to stop the transfer of guns into the United States? That was for you, Weeb.
I would say that we do a pretty good job at stopping major cartels, but individually we are not strict enough on drug dealers. So when someone's really a drug dealer, like personally me, I think they should go away for 30 years, but they get 10 years and they get out. And they don't actually make as much money as people think. It's a very hard, stressful business to be in. I think we do the same thing with guns, except be more strict with them.
Okay. The next questioner is going to be Calvinism. Calvinism, you're on, buddy. Isaiah, you're unmuted.
No, I was asking about speaking for Andrew, but never mind. I do have a question for Weeb, though, since I think of it. Where exactly?
Calvinism, you broke up. We didn't hear what your question was. You could type it out and I'll read it off if that would be better. Yes. Again, if everybody didn't, you can ask a second question, but if everybody didn't hear, I challenged him to continue this with me at the end of the Q&A. So what we're gonna do, what we're gonna do is, since Weeb has already given most of his presentations, I'm gonna do a 10-minute rebuttal, and then he and I are gonna talk for 20 minutes. So I will keep the recording on for that too. Does anybody else have another question before I start allowing double questions? Does anybody who hasn't got to ask a question? Okay, Kanye West, I'm gonna unmute you. You're in, buddy. What's up? What's your question? Kanye, you're unmuted. Who's your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, my question's for Weeb. So, Weeb, do you have a wife or a girlfriend?
I have a boyfriend.
You have a boyfriend?
I have an ex-boyfriend.
Okay. So let's make a hypothetical situation in which your boyfriend is walking down the street, right? And there's a
Yep.
rapist around the corner. Would
Yep.
you rather your boyfriend be able to conceal carry and protect himself, or sit there and take it like a man? And if so, why?
I'm sure you carried a knife or pepper spray or He went to the gym.
Okay, that's not my question. Would you rather have him conceal carry and protect himself, or lay there and take it like a man?
Concealed carry. But there, I mean,
Okay, so
there,
no, stop. So why should your boyfriend be able to protect himself, but no one else in the country should?
because he doesn't need a gun to protect himself.
But you just said that you'd rather have him conceal carry.
Yes, I'd rather have him have a gun and protect himself than get raped.
So why would you
But
rather
I'd
have
rather
him
have him
conceal
I'd
carry,
rather
but
have
no one
him
else
have
in the country should?
Hold on, guys. Stop interrupting each other.
I would prefer a third option. Yeah, it's not an either or. You have a gun and you protect yourself, or you don't have a gun and you get raped. There are more than one way. There's more than one way to protect yourself. Pepper spray, knife, fight. I mean, if he really ran up behind him and he did have a concealed carry, and he really did grab him from behind, I highly doubt his gun would do anything. But even if it did, I mean, a gun is not the only way to protect yourself. A knife would be much better in that situation, or pepper spray.
Okay, what if
And what if
the
what
criminal
if the
has a
rapist
gun?
had a gun? Exactly.
Exactly. What if he had a gun?
Well, I'm
Do you
saying
think
that
pepper spray is going to beat a gun?
no, saying
Exactly.
saying
So,
I'm
so why
saying that
risk the chances of having a weaker weapon when you can just conceal carry and have the stronger weapon?
well, my argument is a buyback, so he wouldn't have a gun.
The criminal would. Why would the
Criminal would.
criminal give in to the laws? Making laws doesn't stop criminals.
I think it would in the long run.
Crime is inevitable. No, it wouldn't.
I think it would. I think that if you did a
I
buyback
disagree.
and it was 50 years in prison, if you're caught with a gun, unless you're a high
So all of a
complex
sudden,
cartel,
criminals
you're not.
fear prison now?
I think they fear 50 years. Yeah.
Really? So people that murder people, they fear 50 years, but they murder people anyways?
Murder is an impulse. Handing in your gun
Okay.
is something that you're going to think about.
So,
You're going to think long and
if
hard
I'm a
about something.
criminal breaking laws every day of the week,
I
and the
I
government
think,
comes out with this new law,
guys, I think the
I'm just
question
gonna
has been
stop?
answered. Now you're asking more questions, and there are other people that want to ask questions. So, once again, if you want to ask a question, type 1 in chat. If you have not asked a question already, if you have asked a question already, type a 2 in chat. Dan, you are already unmuted. You can go ahead and ask your question now.
All right, my question is for Weeb. What makes you believe 250 million armed Americans aren't capable of taking on 200,000 troops and armored vehicles?
I don't think 250 million people have guns, much less knowing how to use them. I think if you're generous, you have 50 million hillbillies who can barely hit the side of a barn against nuclear weapons and tanks and airstrikes. That's what I think.
So you think 250 million Americans won't take arms and during a tyrant government?
I'm saying that if they did take arms, I don't think it would matter. And if the government was really serious about hurting us, there wouldn't really be much of a war. So yes, I do think the 200,000 would beat the 250 million, because the 250 million, I think half of them could be dead before they even knew how to organize. I think that the government could cut off our communications easily. I think they could nuke us and kill tens of millions of us within the blink of an eye. So no, I don't think we could fight back.
So you believe the government would nuke itself?
I'm saying that is possible. Yes, you're talking about tyranny, or you're talking about the government fighting its own people. Are you talking about they want to control them, or they want to? I mean, they could do either one.
Yeah,
I
they would
think.
try to control them. They're not gonna just kill everyone.
I think if they're smart about it, they could definitely do it.
Even though the
They could,
ratio is even though the ratio
completely
is
cut off our
1,001,
Yes.
we weren't even able to defeat Vietnam.
I think they could cut off our communication and rally us up and really box us in and kill off. I think they would kill off tens of millions of us who are likely to be, have the courage to stand up, and they would be able to take over the rest. Yes.
All right. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay. Buff is going to be the next person since he has not been able to ask a question yet. So, Buff, you are on, buddy.
Hi, my question is for Weeb. Do I just go?
Yeah,
Is
just
that
go
the
ahead,
thing?
buddy. Just go ahead.
Okay. Are you so afraid of owning a firearm because you know that in an encounter, you'd probably get it wrestled away from you and then raped at gunpoint?
Okay, that's a troll question. I'm not gonna have him answer that. All right. So
it was very serious.
that Weeb, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I'll answer it.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
So you wouldn't be raped, or you don't want to have a gun?
Saying that I could use. I'm a 6'1", 18-year-old male. I can use a knife. I can use pepper spray. First of all, I have a lock on my door, and I have a phone number.
Because locks can't be
I
broken. You know,
I'm
some people
saying
can
that
pick locks.
I'm saying I can get a narc in front of my house in 4 minutes.
I think he'll come faster than that.
I'm saying no. I
So it's
don't need
not
a
rape
gun.
if you like it. Okay, just wondering. Thank you.
Okay, we have a text question from Peter. I assume this question is for Weeb, although if it's for FSAR, he will say in the chat, what do you think about training kids at a young age about gun safety and use, like I learned as a Boy Scout, or my sister's learning from my grandfather?
I think it's complicated because it is on the surface level, it is a beautiful thing. It's a bonding experience. It's teaching them proper gun safety. And if we really live in a country scattered with guns, we need good people with guns. But I think for the short term, that is a good plan. But you shouldn't be raising them in a world where you need this gun to protect yourself. There's danger out there. Like I think a lot of kids who get trained, I'm carrying this gun for self-defense. When they grow up and they're 20, it's unrealistic. I think that they should have it for the extreme unlikely scenario where they wouldn't need it, even though intrinsically they don't want to have to carry it and they want a gun-free society. But I'm not against kids learning about guns.
Okay. I think that answers the question. We have about 3 minutes left in the 30-minute Q&A session. So if anybody else who has a second question would like to ask a question, or if you have a question for Fully, please type a 1 in the chat now. Okay, so Ducky, you're on, bud.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, where we begin. All right, so you suggest a buyback program, correct?
That was for you.
It would have to be over such a long period of time, but yes.
Okay.
It would take it could take up to 100 years.
So you cite Australia as an example of it working.
Yeah.
All right, so are you aware that in Australia, the gun buyback program largely did not reduce gun. If you look at the statistics, the deaths did not drop all that much. Honestly, they stayed about the same after the ban. There was a large spike, it went back up, and then it stayed static.
You're talking about gun crimes.
Yes.
You're saying gun crimes went up after the ban.
Not up. They went down, and then they went up to about halfway between where they went down and where they started, and then they stayed static.
I'm saying that overall, the violence decreased.
Yes, but it was already decreasing.
We're talking about hypotheticals here. If the stock market's going down and it increases, you don't know what's going to happen. I think if they wouldn't have banned guns, it would be higher than it is right now. But we're talking about hypotheticals, of course. I don't think the trend is you can predict a trend like that. There's 100 different factors that could lead to gun violence.
Sure, but if it stays static over like 4 years, then I don't see how you can suggest that it's just a fluke.
The violence went down overall, though.
Okay.
But it was
Okay.
already
Guys, again, we have a very limited time. There are other people who want to ask questions. So
Correct.
we have time for only one more question. Scarlett, you were next in line. I'm going to give it to you.
Oh.
You're up.
My question was just if Neighborhood Weeb Slayers actually likes Jews and stuff, because he once said that before, and now I don't know what is bait or not.
Okay.
Actually like Jews and stuff, and do you support Israel? Also, are you actually
Scarlett,
pedo?
Scarlett,
Because I can't tell what's bait or not.
Scarlett, You can ask that question once everything is concluded, but this is for the debate at hand, so I'm going to go ahead and disregard
Okay.
that. We're going to go with too lazy, all right? Lazy, you're up, bud. Last question.
Weeb, do you understand how a police state works? Yeah, an A-10s and nukes can't keep a populace controlled. Look at North Korea and other dictatorial states. You need people with boots on the ground, typically with either fully automatic weapons or such shit like that, and then with civilians having nothing, because you need people to kick in the doors and stuff like that. And you can shoot a person a hell of a lot easier than a tank. Your whole argument that the government's too powerful is a better argument to say that's why we need more guns and tanks and stuff, not let's get rid of everything.
Well, I think I'm talking about. I'm also talking about nuclear weapons. I'm not saying that they're going to knock on every single door. I think a strategical, real, tyrannical overtaking is going to be a lot more strategical than. I mean, it's gonna. I think it's gonna be more than just the military. I think they're going to be supporters of the tyranny who join along in the tyranny. Well, you can look at any tyrannical government. A lot of citizens are going to join in out of fear.
Okay, true, but we've also not been doing overly amazing against the Taliban and ISIS. Like they've been holding pretty decent, and the military's able to work way freer over there than they could over here. Like
I
the
don't think
American
that
people would not stand for the same level of force that's being used over there in our own country. I think it would make a lot more people do it. Even if we get a full 1%, just 1% of the country to take up arms, that's equivalent to the entire military, including veterans, assuming that 100% of
they
them
know how
stay
to.
in line and goose step.
If 1%, their weapons are 100 times more powerful. We don't. Most people don't even know how to use weapons half as good as them.
I mean,
they
I
had to
could
go
throw
through
in a coat
intensive
hanger.
military.
I could throw a coat hanger in
I'm
my
not saying.
AR, and it's going to be better than an actual M4 because I built my shit right.
Okay. I think Weeb has answered that question. Lazy, are you satisfied?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to put it to a vote. If you guys want Weeb Slayer and I to hash this out for half an hour, type a 1 in the chat. If you want me to unlock the chat, okay. Yeah, that, who else we got? Okay, Weeb, it's going to be you and me. FSAR, I appreciate you coming in. You got some experience. I hope you learned from what you've done here. Maybe you could improve, and I hope to see you back again. You can hang out in the chat and listen on, and when I unlock it, you'll be free to come back in, but I'm going to mute you at this point. Dan, I'm going to you can unmute yourself. You are going to be moderating between Weeb and I. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and drag my picture down so it shows that I am debating Weeb on the screen there. And then got to give myself the participant role because that's how this works. Now, again, because Weeb has already given his statements, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take 5 to 10 minutes to rebut some of his stuff, and then we're going to interchange. Dan, now that you're in, you will have the ability to enforce the moderation. Just do as I did. Make sure that we don't insult each other. Make sure that we don't go over time, and make sure that we stay to the topic. Okay, so I would like to start with the Second Amendment, first of all. His primary contention with the Second Amendment is that it referred to militias, and I'll quote it just so we have an understanding of what we're talking about. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let me reword that to something else that might make it a little bit more easy for people to understand. A well-balanced breakfast, being necessary to the start of a healthy day, the right of the people to keep and eat food shall not be infringed. So now that you've heard it in that context, it's very easy to notice that what I'm saying there is that because people need to have a healthy, balanced breakfast in order to start a good day, they have the right individually to keep and eat food. Likewise, the Second Amendment was written in mind that because people need to have the ability to secure their freedom, they have the individual right to keep and bear arms. That is the purpose of the Second Amendment. And if you read letters from the authors of the Second Amendment, namely James Madison and George Mason, they agree with this. George Mason is quoted as saying, "What is the militia? Why, it's the people, whole in arms and ready to fight." That's pretty basic right there. John Adams, he had a correspondence in letters with his friend who was a ship captain, a spice merchant. And the spice merchant asked, "Do I have the right to have cannons on my ship?" And John Adams unequivocally answered, "Yes, you do. The Second Amendment does in fact cover your right to own cannons." My opponent also mentioned that the Founding Fathers couldn't have conceived of advances in technology, which is patently false. One of the most devastating weapons used in the Revolutionary War was the puckle gun, which was an automatic rotating flintlock rifle that could shoot about 20 rounds in half a minute. So roughly the same fire rate as a semi-automatic if you're shooting it with one pull of the trigger per discharge. That's generally how people shoot if they want to remain accurate. So we have dispelled the idea that the Founding Fathers couldn't foresee technological advancement in weaponry because that was happening while they were alive. We've also dispelled the idea that the Second Amendment was strictly for militias. And that would be run contrary to the notion of the United States. I mean, if you look back to the shot we heard around the world, when Pitcairn had tried to get the rebels to lay down their arms, they said no, but we will leave. We won't fight you, but we'll leave. But you're not going to get to take our guns. And that is what started the Revolutionary War. So for the Founding Fathers then turn around and say, yes, we're going to, in fact, take your guns away, or you can only own guns if you're in a militia, that doesn't compute at all. And again, there are a multitude of Founding Father quotes that dispel that. Samuel Adams is quoted as saying that the Constitution shall never be construed to remove the arms of a peaceable human being or a peaceable citizen. He also brings up the buyback in Australia, which did not actually prevent mass shootings afterward. We have the, let's see, I have it up. I've just pulled it up. There's a mass shooting in Monash University where 7 people were shot by Wan Yun Alan Jiang. So that's one shooting. We had another shooting in Ockham Heights in 2005. 4 people were killed, 7 people were shot additionally. Let's see if I can find some more here. Looks like we had another shooting in, well, it was like Wedderburn, killed 3 people, injured 9. 2015 Parramatta shooting, killed 2 people. The 2014 Sydney hostage crisis, 3 people died, 1 person was injured. And on top of all of these, you have a multitude of other mass killings that did not involve a gun, because you don't need a gun to commit a mass killing. But the overall crime rate of Australia regarding guns was going down before the 1997 Port Arthur massacre. In the 25 years before the Port Arthur massacre, or I should say actually the 22 years, there was 2 mass shootings. In the 22 years since the Port Arthur massacre, there have been 4. That didn't help. Also, less than 1% of the population of Australia owned guns at the time of the buyback, and less than 10% of those gun owners actually returned their weapons. But the thing about a gun buyback is you're not actually returning the gun to whom you bought it from, so it's not a buyback. I own several weapons, one of which is an M4A1 Daniel Defense, the semi-automatic AR-15 platform in 300 Blackout. I personally modified it. That gun retails for about $4,000. I would never get that much from the government. And what money would the government be using to buy my guns from me? My own money, my tax money. So I pay $4,000 for a rifle, and what do they give me for it? Less than $500 probably? That's generally how gun buybacks work. There's one flat rate for all handguns, and one flat rate for all rifles, regardless of the brand, the manufacturer, the capabilities, etc. you could turn in a high point and get the same amount as an Ithaca 1911. That's a $2,000 price difference. So no, that's not a gun buyback. That's a government stealing your weapons and paying you your own tax money to take them. On top of that, it would have to be mandatory. So if I didn't comply with this gun buyback, people with guns would have to come to my house and take them from me by force. Of course, that wouldn't necessarily happen either. In Washington, after they raised the age of owning a semi-automatic rifle from 18 to 21, 20 county sheriffs signed an affidavit stating they would not enforce unconstitutional gun laws. So that's 20 counties, and Washington has 37 counties that refused to enforce these gun laws. My state, Missouri, every county has signed an affidavit similar to this. Sheriffs will not do this because they know better than to put their men in harm's way. On top of that, the deputies wouldn't do that. I personally, and none of my coworkers would ever attempt to take somebody's lawfully owned firearm away from them. That is a blatant violation of the Constitution. My opponent mentioned that the states have the right to choose. That's false. The Bill of Rights is directly against the states being able to choose. If it's not mentioned in the Constitution, it goes to the states. True, but the Second Amendment is directly mentioned in the Constitution. The states do not have the ability to supersede constitutional rights, which would mean that California and New York and Maryland are all acting unconstitutionally, as well as Illinois. I only have about 1 minute left on my timer here, so I'm just going to wrap it up with this, and then he and I are going to talk. His primary contention with owning guns is that a lot of people get shot in the United States. Last year, we had 16,940 murders. Of that 16,940, 10,111 were perpetrated with firearms. That's about 60%. In Canada, where you're almost not allowed to own weapons of any caliber without extreme licensing, 60% of their murders were also committed with firearms, although they had astronomically less murders. In the United States, where we have 330 million people, we do have a lot of higher crime rates, and per capita, we do have a higher murder rate than any other country. But when you compare countries that have effective gun bans, such as the United Kingdom or Canada, their murders are still committed 50 to 60% with guns, even though they have less murders. That's important to note because it implies not that the guns have any correlation to the murder rate, but that the culture does. I rest. Weeb, you can go ahead and take it away.
Weed. Okay, neighborhood weed. You may begin your rebuttal whenever you are ready.
No, this is a dialogue. He's already had his chance to talk. So now
right,
he's
20 minutes of open dialogue. You may begin.
You said, I mean, even the mass shootings you cited, a lot of them were 2 and 3 people. You had to pick one from 2005, and I've seen the statistics. They're way spread out. I mean,
okay, they still happen.
So what I'm saying is, yes, but they do not happen nearly as frequently. So that, like, 2 people.
How do you
3
measure
people,
frequency?
5 people, by how often they happen and how deadly they are.
Okay.
And they happen very rarely. 2 people die in 2005. Okay, that's a horrible year. 2 people died. But in America, it's a lot more frequent. I understand per capita and all that, but
12 times the size of Australia.
I mean, it just virtually never happens in Australia.
Yeah, because Australia didn't have widespread gun ownership to begin with. Like I said, at the time of the ban, less than 1% of the population owned weapons.
But that's what I'm trying to get at. You said the gun buyback. I actually agreed with what you said.
The 96 gun buyback was not effective.
Well, I disagree with that, but.
Well, I have the statistics if you'd like them.
Tell me that.
Okay. Gun crimes went up from 1.7 per 100,000 to 2.4 per 100,000 from 1998 to 2004. After 2004, they decreased back to the same rate they were decreasing before the Port Arthur massacre.
I'm saying it's impossible to predict what would have happened if we would have let all those guns. They would have let all those guns stay in there.
Okay, but they did, though. I just told you that they didn't effectively take the guns. Less than 10% of the gun owners in Australia actually turned their weapons in. and less than that would turn their weapons in the United States. There are approximately 80 to 100 million people in the U.S. who own guns. If 10% of them turned that in, that'd be 8 million people. So you've still got 72 million to 92 million people who are owning guns. That's, on average, people own more than one gun. But there are more guns in the United States at the moment than there are people. It's frankly impossible to round that many guns up. And there is no licensing structure. There is no registry. The government does not know who owns all the guns.
I wouldn't like that. We're not going to have in Australia by a very long time. That's my main point.
Ever. If the government ever attempts to, take away the guns, I mean, the United States will cease to exist. That'll ignite a second civil war, which inevitably the government will lose. Assuming only 10% of the gun owners in the United States decided to fight back, that's 10 million people versus a couple 100,000. And if you think that the United States government would be willing to drop nuclear bombs on their own territories as a way of quelling a rebellion, you're insane.
Not the very specific areas, though. I'm talking about areas they know would revolt. They could nuke the entire.
Okay,
South.
Nuclear bombs don't affect one area. If I dropped a bomb in Denver, Colorado, the nuclear fallout would be 500 miles in radius. And that's a small one. That's a 25 megaton. Nowadays, they have hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen bombs literally explode the air. You're looking at about a 1,000-mile radius for nuclear fallout on those. One bomb anywhere in the United States would kill tens of millions of people. Why? What would that accomplish? All you would do is damage the infrastructure and ignite further rebellion. What's the point of being a tyrant if all you have is corpses to rule over? Anytime a tyrant comes into play, they disarm the people because they don't want to fight. Fighting doesn't help. In World War II, in Warsaw, Poland, there was a group of Jews, about half a dozen of them, with 4 pistols and 3 rifles, managed to hold off an entire battalion of German troops before they ran out of ammunition.
But can't you understand how the government? There are gun cultures with densely populated gun owners that they could target, and America's practically 30 countries in one. I don't think they'd have a problem with that, and that's assuming that their intentions are to rule over us and not just destroy us.
Yeah, that would be useless. I don't have a problem dying. I would rather die than be subject to tyranny. I feel a lot of Americans share that opinion, especially if you're of the sheepdog mentality.
I don't think most would.
I'm sure the majority of Americans would not prefer to die than live under tyranny, but a significant portion of us would, and that's enough to prevent the government from being serious about a tyrannical regime. The point is they don't want to fight. Castro took the guns. Stalin, Mao, what was the dictator in the Philippines? I forgot his name. You don't want an armed population if you're going to take it over because that produces a fight. You don't want to fight. That's the thing. But then you have the prospect of who is willing to fight. At least half of the armed forces are not going to raise arms against their fellow Americans, especially not in direct violation of the Constitution they swore an oath to. Whether you're in law enforcement or the military, the first thing you swear an oath to is the Constitution. Everything after that is subsequent.
We're talking. In a tyrannical takeover, I don't think laws would really matter. I think 1% of the military could agree to go along, and it would be fine. If you really wanted to,
1% of the military is less than 100,000 people. 100,000 versus 10 million.
I'm saying you could drop bombs everywhere and have.
Yeah, you could. You're absolutely right. The government at any point could choose to just drop bombs everywhere.
That's true.
So your suggestion is it's better to just die in a bomb than to fight back.
I'm saying that we wouldn't be able to fight back.
Yes, we would. The United States has been dropping bombs in the Middle East for the last 30 fucking years, and they're still fighting back. The United States, the largest military superpower in the world, has been ineffective against a group of untrained ragtag Afghani farmers.
That's not true.
Or that's not true, really?
They are not just dropping bombs willy nilly over there. They're very cautious about what.
Okay, they're still dropping
very
bombs.
meticulous.
And every bomb they
And ISIS is on
drop
its last leg.
inspires new insurgents.
Yes. They're also liberating people. I mean,
Who?
they're very meticulous over there about who they kill. They do not just drop bombs. They put themselves soldiers put themselves in danger.
Yeah, you're
protect
right.
the
They
lives
do,
of
and they
people
still
they're
lose.
liberating.
They still lose.
I'm saying that if they really wanted to win, they could.
Do we
And if someone
really want to win?
Yeah, if someone
But
really wanted
these
to
farmers
win,
aren't
they
just
could.
battling America either. They're battling Russia and China and the United Nations and the UK and Australia. There are 6 separate armies in the Middle East right now fighting the same group of people.
I mean, the Middle East is massive.
Yeah, you're right. The US is bigger. How well do you think soldiers from New York are going to fare in the Appalachian Mountains? What about soldiers from Minnesota in the Mojave Desert? Do you think soldiers from Los Angeles, California are going to be able to fight effectively in the Ozarks? No. I guarantee you it wouldn't happen. These people are not going to raise arms against their citizens. If any force were to come and try to take over, it would be a foreign force. And so that's really what we got to worry about there. The government of our government is not going to become tyrannical until after we surrender our right to bear arms. And it is a right, an inalienable right, one that is pre-existing and is acknowledged by the Constitution as pre-existing. It's not granted.
Well, let's just say the government doesn't want to. I mean, even in tyranny, though, they could nuke half of the population and still have a shit ton of people to rule over.
Yeah, we've been
They
over
could
that.
nuke 90% of us. Yeah, so
We've been over that. Oh well. They could nuke anybody. But using nuclear weapons on your own people does nothing but damage the infrastructure of the nation, collapse the workforce, destroy the economy, and inevitably just turn your kingdom into ashes. We shall be free from tyrants, or tyrants will have nothing but corpses to rule over. What good is the kingdom if the kingdom is a wasteland?
a tyranny doesn't need 300 million people to rule over. They could just be content with 2 million. You'd have to be a psychopath.
How do you know? Who's they?
Whoever takes over.
Right. Why take over a population of 330 million people if you're going to wipe out 90% of them?
I'm just saying that we wouldn't be able to fight back at all.
And, I disagree with that, and we have mountains of evidence to the contrary.
10% of 300 million is 30 million people.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of tyrants would love to rule 30 million people.
I'm sure they would too. But you wipe out 90% of the U.S. and you've lost all of our infrastructure.
I'm just saying, a tyrant might not be interested in that.
Why would a tyrant not? Do you know what infrastructure is?
Yes.
What is infrastructure?
Roads, bridges, everything.
No. Infrastructures are the people who build those things. Emergency services, hospitals.
They might not give a fuck about infrastructure.
Okay, this is what we're arguing now is what are we going to do if somebody who has access to nuclear bombs just doesn't care about killing billions of people or millions of people,
Let's bring
hundreds
this
of
back
millions
to
of
the
people?
motion, please.
Okay, what we should be arguing is should the U.S. have stricter gun control? And what is the crux of your argument that we should have stricter gun control because the government could just nuke us? If anything, that would be an argument against stricter gun control. At least we would have the capacity to fight back. If the government has even the inclination to nuke us, we should be fighting back with everything we've got. Even if we die in the end, fighting back is better than surrendering and living under tyranny.
I'm saying that the fight back would be completely useless.
So what? It's useless. Okay,
So
I still have the right to fight back.
Guns. People are getting shot up every day. There's mass shootings everywhere. People are dying on the streets.
You know what the majority of those mass shootings are?
What?
Gang violence. And they happen in 4 cities. Detroit, Chicago, New York City, and Baltimore.
those are densely populated areas.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm saying a full
So it's
buyback
almost
would be better.
like gun control or the amount of guns owned has virtually no correlation to how many murders or how many deaths there are. It's more so to do with how many people there are. Because it's people killing each other. The guns have nothing to do with it. And people would
it's
continue to
culture.
kill each other even if there wasn't guns involved. Do you think murder didn't exist before the invention of the firearm?
Not mass murder.
I beg to differ.
Well, I don't think a person could walk into a church and stab 50 people to death.
It happened in China. Well, not a church, but a school.
One person.
Yeah, one person. It was 20 people, not 50. And there were 3 people that stabbed, I think, 67 people in a train station using cleavers. And you don't need a knife either. What about a bomb? The worst school massacre in history happened in the 1920s. Killed 50 people. It was a bomb. The worst terrorist attack in history. 19 guys with box cutters and a couple of planes. 3,000 people were dead. Now, your argument is that guns should be banned. Is your argument that guns should be banned to prevent mass killings?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only mass killings, all gun violence.
Okay, but the thing is, you're adding an unnecessary adjective there. Because violence will exist with or without guns. Do you think that it's a wise idea to surrender the responsibility for your own protection into the hands of somebody else that you can't necessarily always depend on?
I'm saying that it would take a lot of time to fully get rid of guns.
So do you think that we should be surrendering our right to self-preservation and self-protection to other people who don't necessarily have our best interests at heart?
I think there are more ways to protect yourself than with just a gun.
The best way to protect yourself is with a gun. There is no
Why?
better way to protect yourself than with a gun.
Why?
Name
Because
one.
other people have guns.
No, even if people didn't have guns, objectively, the best way to protect yourself is with a gun. It is the most efficient way of protecting yourself.
It is
Easy
the
to
most
use.
deadly weapon. I know.
Oh, yeah, but that's the point. I mean, it's deadlier than a knife, obviously, in most circumstances. At least more efficient, anyway. So why would I want defending my life to be any kind of competition?
I mean, the chances. I mean, the chances of you actually using a gun to defend your life are so tiny. I mean,
The
this whole
chances
good
of
guy
you
with
being murdered are tiny. Less than using a gun to defend yourself. 16,000 murders every year out of a population of 330 million versus 500,000 to 2.5 million defensive gun uses in a year. That does not include police officers. That is a law study that was backed by the Center for Disease Control back in 2007.
I mean, stand your ground laws and all that bullshit. I don't know if I believe that, but
So people don't have the right to protect themselves.
I mean, I don't think you need a gun to do that. I think that you need to not walk down the alley at 3 a.m. without a
Do you
weapon.
think that the vast majority of those incidents happen walking down an alley?
I'm saying people aren't getting shot in broad daylight.
Yeah, they
People aren't
are.
getting raped
The
and
vast
murdered in
majority of
broad
mass
daylight.
shootings happen in broad daylight. I thought that was the crux of your argument.
No. I'm saying that if you like protecting yourself, you put yourself in scenarios where you're in danger, and I mean, a gun is not going to do anything if someone runs up behind you and grabs you. Like, if you think
I
you're gonna
beg
stop
to
a
differ.
murderer from murdering you, like really, if he really wants to kill you, you really think you're gonna stop him with your gun? Like really?
Yeah, I do.
Like he's not gonna sneak into your house at night and kill you in your sleep. He's not gonna shoot you while you're walking down the street. I mean, how often are you gonna get
You're
terrified
arguing on the
say,
basis of the
serial
vast majority of people who are going to attack you are going to do so with premeditated planning. As opposed to just getting walloped on the street randomly.
I think you can avoid getting walloped in the street randomly.
I'm sure there's measures you can take to avoid getting yourselves in those sorts of situations. But the point is, if you find yourself in that situation, you should be able to defend yourself with the best tool available.
I mean, you could say the same thing about a tank.
A tank isn't used for self-defense. That's an offensive weapon.
But you don't need
And
a gun.
in
They
no
don't have a gun.
circumstance is a tank a defensive weapon. That is pure offense.
I mean, the best possible weapon is going to be a lot different 100 years from now.
You're absolutely right, and we'll still have a right to own it.
I don't think so.
You can think whatever you want, but the fact stands that as an extension of our right to self-preservation, the best available tool for that purpose is a right. What you're arguing for is not a gun ban, it's a gun monopoly. Because you're not going to get rid of guns. They're going to be owned by somebody, and in this case, it's going to be the government. The same government who has repeatedly demonstrated that they do not care about whether or not we are safe, and that they will willingly abandon us to being maimed, assaulted, raped. The 1992 riots, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, the Joplin tornado. We've seen time and time again the government doesn't give a fuck. 1946, Athens, Tennessee. After 20 years of county corruption by a sheriff that was malicious to his people, on August 1st, 1947, a man by the name of Tom Jessupe, who was a black man, attempted to go vote, and it was his legal right to vote even in 1947, and as a result of voting, he was shot in the back by one of the deputies. Because of that, the townspeople in Athens, Tennessee, stormed the National Guard Armory, went home and got their own weapons, and engaged in a 9-hour firefight with 200 McMinn County, Tennessee deputies. Killed all of them, blew up the jail, took the ballot box, and restored power to the people. While that was going on, the governor of Tennessee was notified, and he said, let them have at it. It's their right. In 2012, after the Newtown, Connecticut shootings, a man by the name of James Carter walked up into his town hall in Delaware, where they had just decreed that they're not going to listen to the Constitution, and that in their city, you are not allowed to own a gun, and you have to turn your gun in at the end of this 30-day period.
1 minute.
He said, no, I'm not going to do that, and you have until the end of that 30-day period to repeal that law, or I'm going to come back with a lot of friends. 30 days later, they didn't repeal the law, and 170 people stormed the city council, all armed to the teeth, and they sure enough repealed that law. You have a right. Everybody has the right to defend themselves, their life, their liberty, their family, their property. And if you disagree with that right, well, that sounds like a personal problem, and you're free to not exercise it.
30 seconds.
I'll let you have the last word.
I mean, those are just inefficiencies of a government, though. I mean,
the same government that you want to own all the guns.
10 seconds.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you said to go back to the 40s to find an example.
Okay.
Because it doesn't happen. It
okay.
very rarely happens. And the cons are only going to grow as the pros decrease. The government is always going to get stronger and have cutting edge technology, whether it's nukes. They're going to have fucking laser. They're going to have fucking 9-legged dog laser beam motherfuckers.
I'm pretty sure that 10 seconds has expired. So at this point, the debate's over. I'm not going to hold a Q&A for this. I'm just going to let everybody jump in. So if you want to come into the voice chat, just disconnect and reconnect, and you will be unmuted.
Come on.
I'm going to go ahead and end the stream at this point.